Have you heard of transaction analysis? Counselling is a very prevalent concept in other countries, not in our country yet. Dr. Penfield did a lot of experiments with the mental patients, and he concludes that our brain is like a tape recorder. Every human being aspires for goodness, and goodness can vary. Moses saw goodness in justice, whereas Plato said wisdom is goodness. Jesus, let us say, love is the goodness. Have you heard of good conversation, healthy conversation? How to start a healthy conversation? Many times it so happens that abruptly conversation breaks. Why? Either it is a conversation or interaction, or we can call the transaction. Interaction can be understood like we are not getting out of that, just simply interacting, nothing out of it. But there is nothing like any one of the party not getting anything. That's why we call transaction. Transaction means something, somebody is gaining something. So how can we make a healthy conversation, and how important in our life such conversation? It also helps in your life in terms of negotiation. What is exactly negotiation? Negotiation is not beating him or her down and then getting what you want. No, this can be a win-win situation. So how do we make such things work? And have you heard of transaction analysis? Have you heard of parent, child, adult? I am okay, you are not okay. I am not okay, you are okay. There are different persons' psychological positions. So when we say that healthy conversation requires a certain type of psychological disposition, then why do we keep failing in many times, most of the times? Historically, if you see, large number of instances can be quoted where people have shifted their approach and then achieved great success. Like suppose Nelson Mandela. Who is Nelson Mandela? South African Gandhi, we can say. So he fought and then got the freedom for South Africa way back in 60s, much later of our independence. So basically uninterrupted conversation for long, that is healthy conversation. So as we were discussing in the ethics and values, we see dark, that's why we realize the light. Can we try out an unhealthy conversation? Any two volunteers? Any two of you start a conversation? Anything. And some of us could be experts in making any conversation an unhealthy conversation. We could be great in that. Okay, start Sri Lakshmi, some conversation. So who will be the other party? Other person? Okay, Pooja. Sri Lakshmi, start some conversation on some topic. Anything.
On this special these days, you are looking beautiful and also getting ready. Positive vibes.
No, you, Pooja, you have to make it unhealthy.
What's your problem? What is the purpose you are getting so much beautiful?
Do I need a purpose?
Maybe before, what is the purpose when you are not getting that much?
It's my life.
I know that it can go on forever. How do we break that unhealthy conversation? That's where I think first they were on healthy conversation, but we wanted to see how unhealthy looks like. That's how conversation can impact our relations in a group, amongst the friends, in the family, and so on and so forth. This is how conversation can go unhealthy, and then there is a scope for improving these conversations, which are going to help us in our lives as an individual, lives as a manager of a corporate, lives as a CEO of a company. These abilities are very, very important. Then comes to, there are multiple shades in ourselves. Suppose if I ask a question, who are you? Tell me, who are you, Indruja, Sindhuja, Bindu? I am Bindu. I am girl. Okay. Mahesh. Huh? Very obvious, of course. We know that you are Konda Reddy, but what else? Huh? Customer or a futuristic entrepreneur? Are you a name? What else? Are you this body? We can say that you must have seen number of occasions when a person dies. The moment he dies, they don't call by name. The body has to be. So just before his death, he has a name and he has so many things, and that's how it changes. Are you a mother or child or sister, brother, youngster or old person? There are two spaces. One is galaxy and the universes, multiverse, outer space. There's another space, is the inner space within you. In each one of you, there is inner space. Inner space means behind your eyeballs. That space is equally huge, like galaxy, multiple galaxies. We don't know the size, length, and breadth and depth of these galaxies. Multiverse, they call, multi-universes are there. That's what now the latest thing. But in our self, inside the space, there are billions of neurons, and each neuron getting connected to millions of other neurons, and that whole space, inner space, that creates different shades of these identities. And these identities keep shifting from time to time. You're not always one psychological position. It keeps changing. It gives away to the new places. Are you the consciousness? We'll see how. And there are multiple natures, multiple psyches, okay? And these multiple natures, multiple psyches are in fighting all the time, conflicting situation. Why? This is how explained by this concept called transaction analysis, formulated by Bernie and Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud initiated it, and then Bernie has perfected it, and it has helped in psychiatric analysis and, of course, promoting psychological health of these people. That's what we said. Men has multiple natures. Men doesn't mean that women, okay? Men means women. It represents both. Multiple natures. Each of the time a person is in him or in her, and that person gives to another person, new person in the next situation. Real one keeps shifting, keeps changing. But ultimately, it is expected that it is seen that every human being aspires for goodness. And goodness can vary. Depending on the person's perception, goodness can be varying. Suppose, for example, Moses saw goodness in justice. Being just is a goodness. Whereas Plato said wisdom is goodness. And so on and so forth. It can vary from each one of you. Out of 60, if I ask, then goodness can mean different things for each one of us. And Jesus, let us say, love is the goodness. Everyone agrees that goodness may vary, it can be expressed in different forms, but goodness is the basic virtue which we are promoting. But it doesn't happen always. There is something else which is disturbing it. And the human nature, there's something else in the human nature which keeps disturbing. We are not at peace. We are not always in that state of goodness every time. And what is those? That's something which is disturbing. As I said, Sigmund Freud has formulated a concept. This is a psychoanalysis. As we have just now seen, there are factions, there are different combatants within us, always conflicting, always struggling. And then one taking dominant position at one point of time, and then another at another point of time. And these are all in our conscience, of course, but they are underneath that conscience. Conscience means what exactly now it is being expressed. Unconscious means underneath that storage, the hard drive, cloud storage we can call it. It is there underneath. And he calls three nomenclature, three concepts he gives. One is superego. Superego is the controlling, directing. Within us it is there. And id. Id means instinct. Suppose when you face a danger, the instinct is fight or flight. That instinct, the immediate instinct. But we may not act on that. That's where comes the ego. Ego is a balancing factor. It analyzes the situation whether to fight or flight or take shelter. Suppose if you have to run away, which direction? Who decides that? That is the arbiter. That is the ego. That is the enlightened self-interest. There are three concepts within this is all happening within us. That is the inner space. And that's what Freud says, the psychoanalysis is a dynamic conception where reducing whole of our mental life into an interplay of reciprocally urging and checking forces. The forces are conflicting, forces are fighting, maybe forces are complementing each other, and so on and so forth. That's what he calls psychoanalysis. A lot of knowledge has been added to this understanding. Dr. Penfield did a lot of experiments with the mental patients. They had some problem, they got admitted, and then he did a lot of experiments on these patients to understand the brain. And he concludes that our brain is like a tape recorder. It is fidelity. Fidelity is there. Truthfully records whatever it perceives. How does brain records? First of all, perception, which we have studied earlier, isn't it? Perceive, then judge, and then records. And each of that recording is associated with a feeling also. That also gets recorded. Have you come across any time that after a few years, after some time, you go back to, let us say, your village, and then your early childhood experiences will come back to you? Have you experienced any time? Never? always. And obviously, good feelings would like to come back, but doesn't mean that bad feelings. We go to a village, you must have fought with one of your small childhood friend, that also comes up. So those memories are getting etched on your subconscious mind. So it is there. The feelings are also recorded. What you have seen, what you have observed, what you have heard, along with that, these feelings are also gets recorded. So everyone has such experiences in their lives, okay? So Penfield has observed, suppose a patient is on the operating table and his mind, operating table is a very serious issue. His mind is not there always, okay? He's going somewhere, bottling company or some job or something, and then mind comes back, of course. In that way, mind travels very fast. What we said, along with the recording of those experiences, feelings are also associated and they come out whenever we create those situations. And they will be as vivid as recently happened. That's what the capacity of the brain. That's what we said. Eric Berney is a Canadian psychiatrist, studied these things and then analyzed and came up with the theory of transactional analysis. And the transactional analysis is a way of studying the human behavior and then improving the human behavior. The purpose of the transactional analysis. That's what the counselors do, psychiatric counselors do. Counseling is a very prevalent concept in other countries, not in our country yet. It is picking up. So whenever a transaction is happening, suppose if you see a person, usually say, hello, I'm giving a transaction stimulus, and he or she has to respond to that. And that's what the transactional response that happens. That's how conversation is commencing. So when you get the transaction stimulus, how the conversation will go depend on how your multi-natured person, individual is responding, which is available in your subconsciousness. It all depends on how which part of your multi-natured individual is responding, and then how that discussion goes on. That's how they bring in three components of our personality. It is a psychological reality, okay? They are not in silos. They do not exist in silos. It is our own subconsciousness which has been divided into these three groups. They call parent, adult, and child. And depending on the position of these parent, adult, and child, that would decide what type of personality we are. These are the three states, psychological realities of our personality. And each one of us has each one of them, not one or two or three. All three are available at the same time. And let us see how this segmentation happens in our personality. Within our personality is happening. How does this segmentation happens? Whether they are actually in silos or overlapping is there. Just we'll see, go through quickly how it gets formed. The parent is, of course, the collection of recordings when you are child, especially of the behavior transaction of our external parents. Because since you are small child, you cannot question, you cannot judge, you cannot see the logic in that. If parents are not loving the child, loving me, then that gets recorded, that perception feeling gets recorded. And then parents keep commanding many times and say that do that, don't do this. Mostly not do that, mostly don't. Don't do that, don't do this. Majority of them are don'ts only. That is a fact of life. And all those things gets etched in our personality. That happens within 5 years old. So whatever we do, whatever we study, the management courses, personality development courses and all after that can only make small changes. Already personality has been formed. But there is a scope to change, scope to improve. Let us see. It happens first 5 years. It happens before the actual social birth happens. Social birth means a child going out, interacting, maybe preschool or whatever the schools and all interaction happens. It's all within the house. House influenced by the parents. Parents means control and all those things. Maybe your elder brother or elder sister. If she also is like a parent controlling, then the parent will be of that quality. Real parents are substitutes. The maid, suppose most nowadays the child is for the majority of the time with the maid. How maid controls the child, maid takes care of the child also would decide. It's all etched, this all like recorded, truthfully recorded in our tapes, which are stored on the subconscious mind. And it is very specific to each person because circumstances of his brought up or her brought up is different. So it differs. It goes without any editing because the child is not able at that time still to judge. All these things, non-verbal transactions, tone of voice, the facial expressions, that's what the child sees, the parents or elders. And that gets recorded. That forms the part of the child's parent ego state. So you be very clear on this. Parent ego state means not as a parent what you are doing, okay? Because of the parents, what is getting etched, what is getting recorded in your tape of subconsciousness. That creates the whole personality, part of the personality, and that's how you tend to behave in your interactions in the future. It is all the same thing, the complicated pronouncements. Like let us say the parents tell that you should not lie, but he or she observes that they are lying. So that creates conflict. And in such situation, that conflict creates the trauma of that person. And many times he turns off that recording. Basically, when we are child up to 5 years, we get the experience of learning how to, not what to, how to. How to, let us say, fix a nail, how to switch on the light, how to behave. When you go to friend's house, how to behave, how to greet, and the how to. That's all get etched in the parents' part of the psychological reality. In addition to that, now TV set, let us say, what all he sees as a child, that also gets etched in his or her mind, that subconscious mind, that part of the storage in her mind. So it is nothing but the taught is getting taught by the parents, getting taught by the TV, getting taught by the, let us say, elder siblings. The whole parent, whatever is there, that script in their mind, in that part of their mind is taught concept. Then comes to the child part of the thing. For each of these taught concept, there are feelings in the child. Though he cannot decipher those feelings, but feelings are also getting recorded. Frightening, doubtfulness. Suppose the parents are fighting, somebody is shouting. All those feelings are also getting recorded. So, if more of such frightening things are getting recorded in his or her child, the psychological part, that element, then child thinks that, oh, I am not fit for anything. Then despondency. If more of that, then depression, and so on and so forth. You see now the value of parenting in creating a normal child, how difficult it is. And that too without any type of training or coaching or understanding some of these concepts. The seeing, hearing and feeling, understanding body of data, that is get etched in the child. Whatever he or she understands, not much of understanding is there, but whatever he or she understands at that time gets etched on that part of the psychological part of the personality. But there are bright side to these recordings because of his or her creativity, curiosity, desire to explore and adjust to touch and feel and so on and so forth. That creates, and then whenever he achieves that, mother is not seeing, so he goes, switches off all the lights and then switch on, switch off and all things. Say, oh, I have achieved something. That feeling gets recorded automatically. A lot of such situations happen in his or in her life when he or she is a child, okay? If mother, father are encouraging without much restriction, more of such positive feelings get etched in that part of the tape, which is good. Like mothers caring, mothers rocking or hugging or cuddling. These are all positive vibes. And the child gets a feeling that, oh, I am okay. But this goes on, recording goes on. That's what child formation. Then comes to the child part of the thing. And the third is the adult. And adult is the balancing type, reasoning, logical, explaining out. And again, it also there is a overlap. The adult thing starts forming from 10 months onwards when the child start experiencing the locomotion, walking and so on and so forth. This is actually self-actualization. That is the beginning of self-actualization. That is actually the adult part of his personality. We have seen the parent, that is the taught, and then the child, that is the felt. Taught by the parents, taught by the external surroundings, taught by the elder siblings, taught by the media or TV, and then the felt concept, that forms the part of the child component of this whole frame. And whereas the adult is the thought concept, taught, felt and the thought concept. He or she thinks, he or she analyzes, and that part gets etched in his part of the personality framework. Is overlapping, not that parent ends, child starts. No, it simultaneously it keeps happening. And these etchings will help in our future life and how we make the conversations healthy, productive, and so on and so forth. So there are overlappings. Child and adults is overlapping, and parent and adults they are overlapping. So the justification analysis is happening simultaneously. And in fact, this adult part takes the data from parent also and child also and analyzes and says that this part is not correct for this situation. This part is right for the situation. It is like a processing. Your microprocessor in the computer language. It processes, takes the inputs, takes the data, applies the logic, and then arrives at an output. That's what the adult's part. Why some people are creative, why some people are not that creative, with a very varied levels of creativity, is decided by this factor, because the processor is loaded with resolving those conflicting situations. And adult also identifies, recognizes the psychological status of the other person making that comment. Then accordingly, he or she modulates her response. That's how healthy conversations can be started. The best way is we can cultivate the adult part. Adult part should become much stronger. This is very, very essential element for our life, for shaping of our life. And I think understanding these mental status of parent, child, and adult can help us in improving our conversation skills, improving our negotiation skills in your life as a person and in your professional life also.